Welcome to the T-Squared Dad's Brown Bag Podcast. Here's your hosts, Kyle Baker and Dieter Burrell. All right. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. It's Dieter and Kyle. And Dieter, did you get a chance to watch that little video clip I sent today about Simon Sinek and his perception of soft skills being human skills?
Yes, I did. That was an amazing video. I'm gonna say that I reacted to it. I enjoyed it because it kind of hit a lot of good points. You know, you have to reflect on yourself, and you can relate to what he's saying, especially his commentary about the Navy SEALs. Before we start though, I just want to let everybody know. Thank you. We've hit 7. I'm jumping the gun over here. We've hit 4,000 downloads. This is a celebration for everybody that's listening out there. We're super stoked, and we'll try to.
Woo!
Oh yeah, we're gonna try to see if we can get more podcasts and bring in some good, refreshing ideas for everybody. But anyways, going back to that video, he touched on a few things that really hit hard. I think for anybody that it's in a leadership role, especially when he talked about how the Navy SEALs rate their guys to be part of the team. And two things that he really pointed out was trust and high skilled. The graph that he talked about briefly had to do with
it was performance and trust, right? It was
right.
kind of like a bar graph, or however you want to look at that, of, you know, you have someone with high trust and high performance versus low trust and low performance. And, you know, I mean, in your opinion, where do you kind of fall on that as far as someone that you would want to work with?
You know, when you say that, it's like, and you touch back on his video, he says, high performer. I'm going to tell you the story. I may have mentioned this in a previous podcast. I'm sure you guys are out there listening. But I was working with an engineer in Naples, Florida. This is back in 97, I think, in 98. And he told me a story. He says it was him and a friend, him and a buddy of his. They were going to go to an interview. His buddy was a straight A student. He didn't have to pick up the books. He didn't have to read. He didn't have to do anything. And he was literally, in his mind, thought, you're going to get the job. You're a shoo-in. So his buddy does the interview, comes back. He says, I don't know if I need to wait for a phone call. So he says, well, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to go to the interview. He goes to the interview. Him being an average rate student, C's and B's, he didn't think he had a chance after his friend went over there and spoke his piece and introduced himself. So he sat down and interviewed with the boss, and the boss says, I see that your GPA is average. I got one question for you. Do you want to learn? His response was yes.
Yeah.
And he says,
yeah, that's
exactly
part.
Yep, that's what I want. I want that person in my team. So you don't have to be the high performer, but you have to be the one that's more eager to learn, and the boss can feel that he can trust you.
Yeah, so let me ask you this, Dieter. Let's say you're getting ready to work with someone or anything like that. If on that graph that we're talking about of trust and performance, do you feel like you would rather work with someone that had high performance and lower trust, or would you rather work with someone that had really high trust but only had a little bit of performance? You know, there was a lot that they had to learn, or that they're not necessarily bringing a lot to the table to begin with their performance, but you can trust them with just about anything. I think he mentioned in that with the Navy SEALs, it was like, I can trust you with my life, but can I trust you with my money and my wife? Which is kind of funny, that there's different levels of trust, which they talk about. But, what's your take on that? I mean, if you're looking for someone that you want to work with, Are you looking for someone that's just a high performer and you don't care if you can trust them or not necessarily? Or are you okay with working with a little bit lower performer, but that you can trust with your life?
Absolutely not. I mean, I can't have a team, and I've worked with team members, various team members, in other offices where, you're learning about people, and the moment you find out that these folks, their skill sets vary between one and the other, you have people that are trained intern architects that you've asked them to perform a certain task and you find them doing something else, and you're trying to track your time based on what they're doing, and you ask them, why did you decide to redesign the floor plan? Oh, because I felt that it would work better, it would flow better. And and at that point you realize it's like, we really don't even have the budget to redesign anything. We have to make it work with what's there now. This is a interior gut out that we're just putting the rooms where they're at, and we are adjusting as necessary around existing columns.
So to you, is that a trust issue, or is that a performance issue though?
That's a trust. That's a big trust, because
okay.
I knew that
you can't trust them to do the right thing and not go outside of what they really need to be doing. It's a trust thing for you.
It's a trust, completely, a 100% trust, because I knew that she could do the skill that I gave her. It wasn't a big deal, but she decided to take on another task to do what she felt was more important. So all of a sudden, it's like, you're a high performer, but you're a risk taker. People can't trust you to execute XYZ work because you think you're above all of them. And that happens all the time.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that it really, in which I think he's talking about, I really think he's talking about leaders whenever he's talking about this. But I do think that it kind of goes for everyone. We were in that, I forget what it was, maybe PSMJ or one of those types of things, leadership workshop or project management workshop or something. And not only is it in your company where trust is important, but it's very important with your clients. People want to work with people that they trust. Whether you're necessarily providing the absolute top of the notch level of performance for them or anything like that, they want to work with people that they can trust, and that whenever you say something to them, whether it's about budget or your opinion on the design or the outlook from the project standpoint, they want to know that they can trust your input, and they want to work with you. I think a lot of clients will sacrifice on the performance level to gain that ability to be able to trust.
Yes, I agree with that. Simon does mention something else in his video, and when you have a high performer, and you can have multiple high performers depending on their trust level. I'm gonna reverse it, because you could hire a lot of people. They're high quality, high performers, and some are actually better than others. But he says if you ask a group of people in a certain company who's the asshole in the group, they all point at one person.
Right, and that's the least trustworthy person normally. Yeah. I mean, and then it goes on the other side of that coin. I mean, I don't know about you, but in most places where I've worked, it's very clear who the trustworthy people are. That's the person that everybody's going to talk to. That's the person that, is a sounding board for ideas. That's the person that, it's just the all-around good guy, or good girl, whoever it may be in the office, that really brings that trust where people can feel like they can confide in them, and that their judgment is trustworthy to make sure that they're making decisions that are good for the business, or and has everyone's best interest in mind. They're not necessarily only looking out for themselves. Normally the less trustworthy people are normally putting themselves at the top and only concerned about furthering themselves in the business and climbing that corporate ladder. And they're not necessarily concerned about having those human skills that he talks about, which a lot of people refer to as soft skills. But he says, there aren't hard skills and soft skills. There are hard skills and human skills. And, those skills are like what we've talked about in the past, having compassion and empathy and the ability to communicate well. And, those things are as important, if not more important, than a lot of the hard skills, in my opinion.
Simon does talk about soft skills, and it's one of those things. I was having a long conversation with somebody a little bit ago, and we were talking about you have different personality styles. You got I don't know if anybody out there that's listening ever heard of the DISC personality assessment test, and you got people that are dominant. That's the D in DISC. You have people that are, let me see, it's the way it's broken out to, you have D for dominance, I for influence, S for steadiness, and C for compliant. The purpose of this assessment is to really help people, teams, be able to communicate, raise self-awareness, improve teamwork, make conflict more productive, develop stronger sales skills, management effectively, training without judgment, et cetera, et cetera. What we're talking about is like, hey, usually the people that are classified under the D as dominance are usually the guys that are task oriented.
Is this the test with the 4 different colors?
Yes.
Okay, this is okay. I was just making sure we were talking about or I was thinking about the same thing you were talking about, the one where you have red and yellow and blue and green. That's I think
right. Red being the dominance. Okay. I think I is the yellow. Some different tests have different colors. I think green is steady, and then compliant is
blue is compliant or whatever.
Something like that.
Okay. And continue.
The one thing that we were talking about is usually the D, which is dominance, is the guy that's just, hey, I just want to get it done. I'm going to get it done no matter what it takes. I'm just going to get from point A to point B, no matter how many dead bodies I leave, a trail of like untrustworthy, nobody is going to get it done. I'm going to be the number one person that's going to get it done, and I'm going to achieve it.
Yeah.
What usually happens with that? Here's what happens. I'm going to tell you this from years of seeing it, not only inside offices, but outside offices. You got guys that are so over the top, power driven, where it's like, you see it in movies and you see, oh, where did that come from? It came from real life. Come on, guys. Let's be realistic. I had friends that married 3 times. I've had people that are, it's like, hey, there's an event happening with my daughter, blah, 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 blah. Hey, the wife is telling the husband, go at it. My son's doing this event, go at it. It's like, I don't have time for that. I need to take care of stuff. What happens to those guys? They're extremely successful and they're divorced. They may be married 3 or 4 times, And
yeah, they're kind of a use it and abuse it kind of standpoint of how they're doing business. They're kind of just running through everything as quickly as possible and not really caring about who's left in the wake along the way.
Absolutely.
But
sad.
But we do have to talk about, Dieter, I do think we need to, is having a balance.
Yes.
We can't have all reds. Right, or all dominant personalities. But we also can't have the other end of that spectrum, which isn't what we're trying to say here, of you can't have everyone being in the compliance realm either. Same as with the trust versus performance. Right. You can't have a firm of 5 people or 10 people that are all really trustworthy, but no one's a performer. Because eventually work has to get done. Right? So you have to find that balance, and I think that's where you kind of make sure that you're you're promoting these people along the way that are trustworthy, that can gain those performance skills. And I think Simon talks about that in his little excerpt that we listened to, of currently in a lot of workplaces, what they're doing is they're pushing these high performers up the ladder to have more responsibility, but they don't have those human skills to be able to run a team. I think he mentions in that video, say you're in finance, right? And you're really, really good at being an accountant or whatever. And then you're promoted because your performance level is so high to now be the head of the accounting department. Well, you're no longer using your performance as an accountant. You're now having to try to use your performance with those soft skills, but you don't have any. You don't have any of those human skills. So you're not being utilized correctly, as opposed to pushing these people forward that have these trust skills and these, human skills of being able to manage people and really handle tough situations that may come about as you're pushed up and put into more of those responsibility roles over people as opposed to over tasks. I think that's where that line gets drawn.
They're not diversified. These guys, people turn a blind eye because they're seeing that this guy's or this woman is performing. She's performing. Okay. But why are these employees, why do they keep quitting on them? What are the statistics of employees? Every time you hire an employee, you invest money on them. Typically, the rate of return is third year. The third year is when you start making money out of an employee. Because the first 2 years is training. They said the first year is a loss. The second year is you're even Steven. The third year is when you start making money off an employee. Because you're done training. You're done training him.
Well, and I saw a graph. I can't remember if it was today or yesterday, and it was basically talking about how a office, whether it be architectural or business or finance or whatever, operates whenever they start to promote these people into management that don't have those skills, right? And so they're on a steady uphill climb, and then they change positions from doing the task to running the group of people that are now doing the task, and it drops dramatically with production. And then it starts to raise back up again until something happens that's a catalyst where they need to have those human skills and a difficult time happens. And what happens is they have management turnover because that person can't handle those situations because, one, they've never been taught to. Some people innately have these things, but a lot of people really need to have leadership training. And so what happens is it becomes this wavelength where it's a turnover of management, right? You're being very, very productive, and then something happens and boom, drops way down. And then they get new management in, and it does great until something happens and then it drops way down again. And that just continues. So you never have this steady line of work going on or a steady uphill trend. You just have this constant wavelength of valleys and highs and lows. And, so we need to, I think that's a big focus that people need to put on their businesses, is trying to find those people that might be hidden in the shadows because they're not popping out on the numbers reports, right? Because they might not be the best performer in the numbers, but they're bringing a lot to the table.
Here's the thing. Reality is, I think somebody was telling me just earlier, we're saying, well, maybe those guys that are high performers and they have soft skills, they're unicorns. They don't exist. And I said, well, hold on a second. Maybe they don't exist in the AE industry, but they do exist outside the AE industry. And then he said, it's hard to believe that they do exist. Well, why is it that a lot of the larger companies understand their failures when they see a huge turnover? Why is it that Navy Federal, we're gonna use them, we're not going to say their name, Navy Federal has a phenomenal low rate of turnover? Why? because they use the skills that work. They tell their staff, we need to train you. You need to apply those skills. I don't want a high performer. I want a middle of the road performer that can motivate people to become high performers with soft skills. And
I would be careful. I would be careful with saying that you don't want high performers, right? We do want high performers. That we want the unicorn, right? I mean, we would love to find a high performer who's highly trustworthy.
It will be amazing, especially in our field.
But if we're going to sacrifice on one of those things, if we're going to have that trade-off, I think you and I can both agree we would trade off a bit of performance for more trust.
Yes.
As opposed to the opposite side of that of less trust, higher performer.
Absolutely.
Right. But then it does go back a little bit, you know, and I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here, but you know, at some point you got to have some people in there that are high performers, whether they're trustworthy or not. But I think the key to that is one, recognizing that, and that you're utilizing that person to the best of their ability. Don't put a person who has no human skills in a place of management just because they're a high performer. You have got to recognize that and make sure that you're doing things in a way that aren't going to put them in a position to fail. Because if you don't have those human skills, you don't need to be having your task associated with operating more and more with humans.
Here's the perfect example of a high performer telling his boss, this place is going to crap if I'm not doing this or that. And this is a repeating theme, and I've seen this in other offices that I've worked at, where they continually say this to the leadership role, and they tell them, because those leaders are leaning on these guys to be the next generation of leaders. And what do they keep saying? It's like, your staff doesn't know what they're doing, they don't know where they're going, they're untrained. Without me, this place will fall apart. It's tactics. It's absolute tactics. And they're, I'm going to call it hijack. They hijack those businesses, and they hold their employers hostage by using these tactics. And they terrorize their employees. What was the right word that we were talking about earlier? They're bullies. They become bullies in offices. They think that they're getting the most performance out of the employee. Oh, they're coming on the weekend. Yeah, they're spending the whole weekend working on it. And then all of a sudden you talk to another office and you say, "Is your team coming in on the weekend?" "No, my team finished. We work 14-hour days during the week, and they had the weekend off." "What was your team doing?"
Yeah.
"Well, my team was coming in at 9 and leaving at 5. "Why?" They were punching in and they were leaving. And why are they coming in?
Right.
What's taking them that long when we're doing the same work that you guys are doing?
Well, they're undermotivated, right? They're not happy.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I mean,
they're not engaged.
If you can be you have to be a motivator, you know, and people work hard for people that they want to work with, and no one wants to work with the so-called asshole of the office, right? In any business, this isn't an architecture thing. If you're listening out there and you're in some other realm, this is not a architectural AE thing. This is across the board. People work harder for people that they want to work with, and people that they trust, and people that they can, you know, become friends in the office with or outside of the office with. You work harder. It's been shown. Studies show that people work harder and put in more time for people that they care for. Right? Like, are you going to work harder for your friend, or are you going to work harder for the person that you hate? You're obviously going to work harder for your friends.
Yeah, I had a project manager in an office, and I think I mentioned this to somebody, where he passed away from cancer, but when I went and started working with him, he leaned over at me and he said, "Dieter, I'm gonna put my trust on your shoulders, and I need your help to get these things done." And I said, "You got it. I'm gonna be your cane. You lean on me. If you got my back, I'll get yours, and I'll try to make you look good if you're there." And I did whatever it took, because I knew that he had my back. I did whatever it took to get the job done, even if I had to come in and do work on the weekends and take home to do work at home. And I regret to say that he passed away from cancer. And I remember one time he had a conversation with me, and he said to me, "Dieter, I know I can no longer have your back. Management has changed, and where I thought I had some leeway, I no longer have that." And I think it's almost at that moment that I realized that my tenure at that office was no longer viable, because I felt that he was the only person that had my back, and it was only a matter of time for me to pack my bags and leave. And I regret to say that he passed away from cancer, from other reasons. But
yeah. Well, and I think another thing that maybe we should talk about is having a boss like that, where that he would do anything for you the same way that they understand that you would do anything for them, right? Like a boss or a leader who is willing to get in the trenches with you. If you're having to come in on the weekends, if you're having to put in long hours, then they're doing the same thing, right? You're not working Saturday and Sunday, putting 10-hour days in, working 60, 70 hours a week, and you pull up Facebook and you see everyone else is just out having a good time, right? Or in the office, as in any office, you have an employee who's got a deadline and he's really struggling to meet it, and everyone else is clocking out early on Friday, but this guy is about to have to work for another 30 hours over the weekend to get his stuff out. The way you want to structure your office is to surround people with people who have their back, right? I see that, John over here is really struggling. Hey, and I don't want him to work over the weekend if I don't have to. Why don't I see, I finished my project up a little bit early. I'm going to see if I can't help him out. See if I can't take a little bit of burden off of that guy, and come together as a collective to be able to accomplish a task, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, that's his problem. That's his responsibility. He'll take care of it. I'm going to go do what I need to do." I want to be surrounded by people like that.
I am too. I want that too. I think we all just to sum it up. I think if we would have had the right leaders in our life to help us develop those soft skills, I think we would have had high performers that had empathy. They could relate to people.
Well, and sometimes as an employee or whatever, you have to look at your leader, right, and see what their background was, right? They're probably, they never got training. They're just repeating the bad habits of the person that was overseeing them, right, at their old job or whatever. And they're just constantly repeating these bad habits over and over and over again. That whole bulldog mentality that I know we've talked about in the past, and I'm just going to rule with an iron fist, as opposed to the approach that really works. I always remember, I don't know where I heard this from, but it says you have a chain, right, on your desk, and you have two options. You can either pull that chain or push that chain. If you take one end and you push it, which way is it going to go? You don't really know. It's going to go forward, but you're not really sure if it's going to go left or if it's going to go right, and how efficiently it's going to move in that direction. It's not going to move very efficiently, right? So that's your leader. That leader is pushing the chain, and the chain is all of the employees. So really what you want to do is you want to pull that chain. You can tell it exactly which direction to go and which speed to do it in. And that's the most efficient way. You need a leader who's going to pull you and be there with you, as opposed to push you harder and harder, trying to make you go in a direction when you don't really know which direction it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
But I think we're gonna wrap it up tonight, Dieter. That was really good. And for anybody who's interested in watching that video clip from Simon Sinek, we'll try to put that on our Facebook page for you, and anything else that we talked about today. And we will talk to you guys next time. But before we go, as always, we want to make sure we do our joke of the day. And this week, Dieter, we have a special one. I like this one a lot. Why did the Scarecrow win an award?
Why?
He was outstanding in his field.
Outstanding in his field. Wow.
Talk to you guys next time. Thanks for listening to the T-Squared Dad's Brown Bag Podcast. Please subscribe on your favorite platform, and we will talk to you next time.